In today's video, I want to cover a very important lesson about how we use our limited time on continuing education, and specifically with the books that we choose to read or not read. I like to cover this by doing a little bit of inversion and talk about a book that I did not like. A book for me that was not good. This book came highly recommended to me for some very successful entrepreneurs, some people I really look up to. And in fact, the individual who wrote this, his name is John Doerr. He is a very famous venture capitalist, probably smarter than I will ever be in my life. So let's start with that. It's not to say that this person isn't brilliant or that this book doesn't have some things to teach, just that for me, it is, I think, symptomatic of my least favorite business book. So here's the takeaway for you as a training gym owner. One thing it occurs to me is a little bit of a challenge of training gyms, particularly after a certain level of sophistication, is that the types of challenges you will run into and the types of education you need to move your business forward become a little harder to find, because a lot of business books like this that focus on larger corporate structures have a lot of information that may or may not be relevant to smaller businesses. Now, ostensibly, the premise of this book actually, I think, is broadly applicable. And those who have followed my work, I am a little bit of a nerd, a fan of the various business operating systems that find ways to create order out of the chaos and create systems of planning for you and your business and for your team. If you are unfamiliar with any of those things, this very, very high level overview for you might be the only thing you can handle at this point if your training gym has never done any kind of quarterly planning. The challenge of many business books is they're written for these larger corporate structures. And the reason is, if you're writing a book, you want to ideally sell the book as a sales pitch to get a consulting gig for larger businesses. And the reality is, with all due respect, my training gym owner, most training gyms don't have the budget to have 5-6-figure consulting contracts with the type of people that like to write these books. Now, John Doerr, who wrote this book, he didn't need to write this book. This gentleman is, again, he's a big deal. He doesn't need to write this book. My sense is this is something he wanted to do as part of his desire probably to give back at this point in his career. And again, I could see potentially being valuable for some people some of the time. Now, let's circle back to how you make these decisions, because the reality is, I don't know that there is an obvious algorithm, because deciding which books you're going to read next depend to some extent on what existing knowledge you have. At the very least, for those not familiar with my goal setting system, I think it's important to get clear on where you want to be in 5 years, where you want to be in 1 year, and then start to unpack, okay, well, if that's the case, what are the skills that you need to develop that will move you to your preferred future? And this is highly subjective. I think this is a type of conversation that is perhaps best had with a mentor that understands what your goals are and that has a good lay of the land when it comes to various resources, because of course books are just one, and sometimes it makes more sense to either do a course, to do a workshop, to hire a coach of some kind. But ultimately, your time is a constraint. Anytime you have an educational venture, whether it be a book, a workshop, that's going to take you anywhere from 3 to 12 to 20 hours, well, if you're not really getting commensurate value with that time investment, that's going to actually slow you back. Now, one final bit of assurance here, which is, unfortunately, you're never going to get this 100% right. There's just a lot of things you don't know. Listen, this particular book, again, it's not a bad book by any means. It was recommended by people I really trust. I was really excited to read it. Admittedly, if I were going to be critical of myself, I can sometimes be a little bit completionistic. And I probably could have pulled up a little bit earlier in this book when it became clear this is a normal, massively available Silicon Valley big businessy business book, which is going to have a couple kind of actionable things and mostly stories about the amazing industrialists of Silicon Valley and how amazing and exciting it was when they won against all the odds to create business success and add shareholder value. And a lot of that stuff can certainly serve its place, but for training gym owners, I would encourage you to be thoughtful consumers of which books you're going to spend your time on. And as a general thumb, at the risk of being overly crude, you likely want to focus on things that are really geared more for small businesses. That's not to say that you can't find value in reading Good to Great. Who doesn't love Good to Great? A lot of those principles can be broadly applicable, but the methods, the way in which you apply them, will have to be specific to your size and your scale of business. So that's my little mini review. Again, I'm not saying Measure What Matters is a bad book, just wasn't a fit for me. And I would encourage you to be critical, not only consumers of information, be thoughtful in how you decide what it is you're going to focus on. And if you need some help, if you want to talk to somebody about it, well, gosh, you can always email this guy here at mark@bizforunicorns.com. My name is Mark Fisher, and if you're interested in making more impact, more income, and more happiness with your training gym, then you're going to want to go ahead and subscribe, like, and share for more actionable tips, psychological frameworks, and philosophy.